Hi, friends, and welcome back. It's BB here, and I have another spread to share with you in my grid journal. I have to say right off the bat, I love how this one turned out. Sometimes when you sit down to play, things just don't come together. Other times they do, but in the mix of things, we usually get okay results. But sometimes you come out and you just really love it. Now, I have to say, one of the main reasons is probably my use of my favorite color, Chartreuse. Pretty much anytime I'm using this color, I like the results. So I think that's a good lesson for us to learn is it's good to branch out and try different colors and challenge ourselves. But sometimes if we need that win, it's good to go back to what we're familiar with. Go back to those colors that you're always drawn to or that feel a little bit more familiar. And other times we can take and, challenge ourselves to try different color schemes, try new techniques, try new things. But there's nothing wrong with going back to what you know and what you do well. So I'm starting out here and I'm working in my grids. I started with just some collage and I'm using an old receipt. I have my Stabilo Woody now, and this is a really fun water soluble supply. And those are my favorite because I love the way the pigment moves around once you add in some water. You can dip those directly in your water cup, or the most common way that I use them is I scribble on the page with it dry and then come back in with my paintbrush and move that pigment around. So you're not going to have the pigment just in the one spot that you actually put it down on the page, but you can really move that around. You can move that pigment into other spots that you didn't even do any scribbling in. And I like to call them kind of like ghost marks or impressions versus the first ones that really have that imprint of your scribble mark. So I'm just being really loose and organic in these first couple steps, getting something down. So the white page, the blank page can be kind of overwhelming. And something about the grid journals is it's kind of like, well, for this one, it's 8 blank pages that I'm working on. And so getting that down, oftentimes I'll use scribble marks with a pencil or just randomly putting that collage down like I did, bringing in some sort of pigment. That really helps me to get going and stop thinking. The longer we stare at that blank page in the beginning, I think the more intimidating it's going to be. At least I know that's the case for me, is I just start trying to think through every single step I'm going to do and what will come next. And that really doesn't benefit me in my art practice. So yes, sometimes I have a general idea. This one, I came into it knowing what color scheme I wanted to use. I had used it on something else recently, and so I was fully inspired to keep using it and go with it. So in that regard, that's all I had planned out for this one. Nothing more than that. And that was enough to just give me kind of that prompt, that boost to go and start working on it. So I brought in some of those greens. I'm working mostly with my finger. I like the control that you can get on the page with just mushing that paint directly into the page. And now with some of those elements still wet, the Stabilo Woody marks are still wet, the green is still wet, I'm coming in with my white gesso and blending in some of those areas. So it's bringing out really fun tones and different colors that are different than the original that I put down. So I like how it blends with the color that's there on some parts and others it doesn't. It creates a more unexpected kind of look here. I'm doing some circles that are going off of the side of the grid, that little block, and that helps it to feel like I'm not trying to fit everything into that square. Some of these elements are going out and around it, and you could even go outside the boxes if you wanted to. I'm choosing to pretty much stay within the blocks. I'm okay if some stuff goes off and it gets a little bit messy. But overall, my goal is to stay within those little grid marks. I'm adding in more layers, continuing on. I could try to add different things, or I can do some of the things that I've already done a little bit more. of that Stabilo, and now with my vintage inspired tape from Wow Studios, I am adding in a few of that. So it first started, I had reinforced one of those collage pieces because with the water, sometimes your collage will come off the page a little bit. And then I liked the way that that looked. It's bringing in an additional warmth to the page and going more towards those warm, natural tones instead of just the cool tones. And so that's another really fun thing to do. I could also add in some washi tape, some different papers. So I'm gonna bring in some paper from an old collage, a vintage ledger, and I love the handwriting that's on there, and the tone, the color of that paper is perfect for those warmer tones that I'm trying to bring in. Sometimes when I'm doing that collage, I like to use my bone folder to make sure it's staying down on the page. This just helps. I already have some paint and stuff on my fingers, so I didn't necessarily want to spread that out or things like that. So that just helps it get nice and flat on the page. Your fingers are going to work just fine too. But sometimes I like to just smooth it out a little bit more. When you're working on your grid journal spread, it can feel like you want to add the exact same element into every single block on your page. And while that's okay, you can do it in different ways. Oftentimes, I like to kind of switch it up. So I know I've talked about this before in my previous grid journal spreads, but often I think of each individual block as its own composition, but then I look at this overall page as a composition as well. So I don't need to repeat myself in every single block in order to get the effect that I'm looking for. I can kind of move it around the page, and then your eye moves along with you to those different spots depending on what elements you're using. I want to embrace those warmer tones even more, so I'm coming in with a liquid acrylic ink, and I always want to be a little bit more careful when I use an acrylic ink inside of a sketchbook like this, just because I can get really messy, and I have the tendency to really use that water to make things spread out. So this color is actually called Antelope Brown, but it comes out this really beautiful olivey brown color, and it's like the perfect bridge between the greens that I'm using and then those more natural tans that I was talking about. So I'm using it just little by little. A little bit goes a really long way. So you can always add more onto your page, but sometimes it can be quite messy to come back and try to clean all of that up. But trust me, usually I end up using too much, but I'm just trying to go in little by little and using it in different ways. You don't have to always put it directly into that block. We can do what we had talked about earlier with some of those like ghost impressions of just bringing that ink into different spots. This really helps, I think, with the richness and the dimension of the overall spread, making it so that all of those colors are not lying on the same plane of kind of those like medium tones, but I'm bringing in some of those darker ones. The ledger paper helped bring in some of the lighter ones along with that white gesso. So as always, I try to link the supplies that I use down in the description below. But of course, if I missed anything, please let me know and I can find that link for you. So I hit that page with the heat gun, and now just thinking, what are the final things I need to add? I think this could be just fine leaving it how it is, but I want to come back in and add just a few more layers. It's at a place that I would be happy leaving it at, but what if I were to add a little bit more, maybe bring in some art marks? I think it will really take it to the next level. So sometimes if you're not sure whether you should continue, you're worried about something getting too busy, you can always leave it and come back to it later. Most of the time when you're, really close to your page and you're working on it, our perception of what's going on can be a little bit hindered. And so if we give it some space, give it some time, and come back to it later, we can see things with fresh eyes. Another way that I like to do this is just try kind of change the angle that I'm looking at it. Sometimes I'll hold my page up or put it, at the top of my desk and look at it from a little ways back. This helps a lot just to see things from that overall perspective. I'm adding in these black art marks and I'm being real loose with my movements. I'm changing the way that I'm holding my pen throughout and having that loose grip versus a tight grip. You're going to get different results with all of those different things. And so I am doing some straight lines here. Oftentimes I like to follow the blob of paint that's there and kind of use that as a general outline. I hope that you guys love this spread. I'm really enjoying this one, and I think I even might need to scan it in and create some digitals out of it. The color scheme is just so much fun. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you next week with another fresh tutorial.